Once again, they kind of follow that similar hero's journey pattern. Just in a few moments of action, you can run through a whole hero's journey cycle, right? Problem-solving sequence. And they did it, was it June 2016?
June 26th.
June 26th in Augusta Walmart parking lot, where they were minding their own business. What was the ordinary world situation, life before this moment happened? Lead us up to when you drove into Walmart.
We went to Walmart to get pool supplies for the pool we were going to put up. Had our kids with us, his mother, planned on going out to dinner afterwards. I think why I ended up getting Legos. It was just normal, you know? And we walked out and you could hear people fighting. And how many people here actually have heard people fighting? And you try not to look, but you're listening
Right.
because everybody's nosy and we just want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So we knew there was fighting, but you know, you don't really look.
So you're out in the parking lot.
Yeah, we had left, loaded everything up in
So
the parking lot.
the fighting is sort of the call to action or adventure. You heard something happening, and there's another part of that comes up.
Yeah, near the initial argument, there what seemed like two couples yelling back and forth. First instant, maybe over the parking spot, someone cut someone off, whatever. Normal, it's a day at Walmart.
You're getting right. They were wearing like pajamas with a happy face.
That's Tarjay.
Had a hole in their rear end of their pajamas. Just kidding. So you were getting in your car, or you were in your car already?
We were getting in it when we heard the fighting. And as he's backing out, we hear gunshots.
Wow.
Now that's not a normal Walmart thing.
That's the call to action right there.
Maybe in New York, it's normal. In New York City, not here in Maine. It's actually quite infrequent,
Right.
if ever. So he backs up the car, points it towards it, because at that point, everybody stopped behind us. The whole parking lot froze. And really, there's no way to get out of it. He gets out, and I'm in the car with the kids.
So let's pause right there for a second. So there's the legitimate claim to the turf that you have to have when you're going to intervene, right? I might not want the whole world to engage in bullying and abuse and domestic violence, but I can't make you stop going towards guys that are mean to you, right? I can't make you stop going towards women that are mean to you, or whatever, vice versa. I have relatives that I wish I could get them to stop harming themselves or letting others harm them, but I can't. So I have to be able to sleep at night, you know what I mean? So what I have legitimate claim to is the turf that I'm involved in. These guys were in their car or around the car. They had a child in the car. Two. And I think one of the things we talked before about it was, which I'm sure you're getting to, is the fighting was starting to move towards your vehicle.
Actually, it was, they shot at each other. There was about 6 shots, and only one grazed somebody, so I'm not even going to get into my opinion on that.
They weren't any further away than me to your computer.
Right.
That's how close they were. 2 vehicles parked next to each other.
So there's your legitimate claim to intervention.
Yeah.
And then he gets out. They're fighting on the ground.
The guys that were shooting are now fighting.
Well,
physically.
2 of them.
Yeah.
The girls were standing off. But the one backs up alongside the vehicle and he's reaching towards his waistband. I don't know what's going on. I didn't know he got grazed. I just know he was one of the ones that was shooting. And now he's backing up alongside the vehicle that my daughter's at, like right along that side of the vehicle. And there's a line from a movie that I think is really important that most parents should know. That it's from the movie Enough. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but the line is, you have a divine animal right to protect the lives of you and your offspring.
I like that.
And I got out. No gun, nothing, just me screaming at him. Because in that moment, I thought my children were at risk.
Mama Bear was coming out.
Yes, I'm a very fierce mama bear. And my mom asked me, and she still asks me to this day, why did you do it? Why didn't you stay safe? And I said, I've had a good life. I've had 3 children. The 2 kids that were with me hadn't had a good life. They were still growing up. My son was 7, going on 7, and my daughter was 16. So they're still babies. My daughter would take offense to being called a baby still. Just telling you this now, so nobody rat me out. But they were still babies, and it's my right to protect. It's my job to protect them. I shouldn't even say it's my right. It's my job.
And can I add one more thing? Sorry to cut you off. Just to bolster with that, in terms of the general hero stuff for educational purposes, people often think that you're putting yourself at risk when you intervene. But when people are shooting 2 cars over, you're already at risk. So that's the illusion piece that we have to kind of get over. You know what I mean? Like when you're living with a guy who's been beating you for 14 years, you're not any safer by smiling at him or getting in bed with him that night and making him think you're okay. You know what I mean? Like you're at risk. So if you can just call a spade and say, wow, those 2 guys are shooting at each other and there's 4 people now they're fighting and they're next to my car and my kid's here, I'm at risk. What am I going to do about it?
And, like I said, it was hard for me to break out of the mindset that I grew up in because, like Shawn talked about, my father was abusive. And I grew up, you didn't want to call attention to yourself because the minute you were there and being paid attention to, you were going to get hit. And it's taken me my whole life, and to this day, I still have problems where I can hear my father telling me that I'm stupid, I'm useless, I'll never amount to anything. And it was really hard to do this, but at the same point, these were my children. And we actually got messages afterwards from numerous people that were in the parking lot that had thanked me and my husband for stepping in. Several people heard me yell. And we found out later on that these were all drug dealers. 3 of them were from the state of New York. One of them was from Augusta, but they were selling heroin and cocaine. And I guess we were doubly heroes because we managed to stop this from hitting the streets.
Wow.
And
where it was a drug deal, many of you are in the mentoring program, have backgrounds in this type of stuff. The whole argument started over the balance of an EBT card that was supposed to be part of the transaction. There was a $3 discrepancy that started the entire argument.
Wow.
$3 is $3.
$3, yes. I mean,
So, go ahead, get me all excited.
so weird to think about, because you don't think about this happening here.
Right.
And then when you're in that position, I mean, like he said, until you're in the position, you don't know what you're going to do. And I grew up in Jersey. Drug deals were common. And I never stepped up. It's that one moment that you feel compelled to do something.
Mm.
It might not be anything big like we did, because it is big. We got subpoenaed by the federal court system. We just had the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. One of their agents came last week to deliver a subpoena for me and my husband.
Wow.
So this is an ongoing thing we're doing, because this journey hasn't ended. We have to keep going through it.
Right.
But it's not something we have to do. Both of us feel pretty good about doing it because it just shows people that you can make a difference. And while it's scary to do what we did, it's not hard to make a difference.
Right.
I mean, just stepping in and stopping a fight ended up being a whole other host of issues that we've stopped.
And one of the things that I wanted to mention as a facilitator doing our, the New England's first hero training seminar, right? Great timing. I saw Dan and Carrie's story and I thought, man, this is amazing. Last week there was the shooting in Florida, which is terrible, mass shooting, right? Many of these have been happening. So it's an example of people using firearms in ways that are very destructive and deadly. And I know a lot of you guys have been posting on Facebook, and so have I, about what's okay and not okay, and But one of the things that I loved about their story is that this is a story where people use that, what's the word? Dan was a concealed carry person at the time. And it's a story where they were able to use a firearm to stop a shooting. Nobody had to get shot. So,
He actually never even fired his weapon.
yeah.
He
So
didn't have to.
So let's pick up right there. So this is stage 7 called the approaching the problem, right? You had your ordinary world, you got your call to action with the bullets and stuff. You kind of skipped over the whole mentor piece because they're, maybe the mentor was the people like kids yelling at you like, Mom, do something, or whatever, but.
No, actually.
Sometimes the mentor can be in the back of your mind.
Right.
Something from long ago.
Yep.
That at that moment.
That's a great point. Right on, brother. That's what I'm talking about. The mentor can be your own conscience or your experience, your training. And so you approach, stage 7 is when the knight starts to go towards the cave where the dragon is. He knows he's going to have this battle in a minute. You know this is happening, you're in your car, you happen to have a firearm on you, and then what?
Sorry.
At that point, I was just, by the time I got out of the vehicle, my mother to this day can't understand how I was able to maneuver the vehicle to a safe position, get my seatbelt off, exit the vehicle, and draw my sidearm simultaneously. So as I was getting out of the vehicle, drawing, beginning to round the vehicles that were between us and what was going on, at that point the shooting had stopped. And I saw the two individuals hit the pavement, throwing fists at each other from behind the other vehicles. So at that point, it was just come out from behind the other vehicles, identify myself. As I'm identifying myself is when I saw the second concealed carrier coming from a 45-degree angle from another part of the parking lot, yelling to identify himself, and the two of us together controlled the situation.
Woo! Right on. That's awesome. I wish we could have you bum rush the video camera and show us your maneuver. That'd be cool for the people watching on Facebook. But so go ahead.
It was 7 minutes, and 7 minutes doesn't sound like a whole lot of time, but when you're in a situation like that, it's felt like eternity. And he actually managed to get his foot on one of the guns that they had and kept his foot on it the whole entire time.
Wow.
And it was 7 minutes of standing on this gun.
Wow.
But he made it safe for everybody else. What was like a row over, there was a family with a little baby. And I remember talking to the husband, and he was saying about how he was going to try to figure out how he was going to shield his son and still protect his wife.
Mm.
And I got messages where there was a guy whose wife was in the parking lot. She was pregnant.
Wow. So this is the reward stage that comes after the confronting of the problem.
It just felt really good to know that one action that he did and one action I did benefited so many people. And like I said, at the time, we didn't realize it was a drug deal. It was the next day that we found out. And it made me feel so much better that it had happened, because we kept so many more people that we'll never know safe. Because I know Elizabeth talked about being addicted. And I've seen it growing up where I used to grow up, which is one of the reasons why we moved up here.
And there's been like 400 overdoses on opiates in the past year in Maine. So that's a major victory right there.
Yes.
And so one thing I was going to just add is showing the process of the hero's journey when you try to solve a problem is, so you confronted something, you got a reward from it, and then you attempted to reintegrate back into your day-to-day life and go back to your business. But you even mentioned earlier what I see as stage 11 with it is called retaliation and resurrection, where that problem that you knocked down isn't knocked out, and it comes back where you have to go to court or get a subpoena. You still have to be embroiled in it to some extent.
It's not just that. My son's actually really affected by this still.
He's 7, I think you said.
He's 9 now.
And he was there.
Yeah. for 2 weeks afterwards, my mother-in-law lives in Union, and I don't know if anybody knows the area. A lot of woods. Everybody goes out shooting, hunting. My son was terrified every time he heard a gunshot go off because he thought that the bad guys were coming to get him. And even to this day, and he writes stories in school, and it always involves a bad guy with a gun. And every time that this happens, we keep talking to him and tell him it's not just bad guys that have guns, it's good guys like Daddy.
Right.
And he's getting better at it, but it's still something we have to work with. So the ATF thing isn't the biggest part of us, where the retribution where it comes in. For me, the biggest part is working with my son every day, that he's safe, that if more people are like Daddy, more people are going to be safe.
Right. That's awesome. All right, let's give it up for Dan and Carrie. That's a good place to end it. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you coming. Awesome example. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Come back up here. Here, take this
I
back.
thought you said there was going to be some questions.
There was going to be some questions. You go right ahead. I'm new at this.
A lot of folks would say, like, I commend you, like you did, in the carrying. I had a carry a weapons permit at one time. Now you don't have to have a permit, right? But
The permit's still great for reciprocity, because not
This is
every
it.
state has the constitutional carry.
and you had training to get that permit, correct?
Yes.
Okay. At one point, you're gonna think, and I don't know how you did it all, like what you said, in driving, parking, the seatbelt coming off. At any time, did you think, if I do this, if this goes sour or goes south, me put my foot on the gun, how am I gonna deal with it? Like, what point do you think? See, a lot of people don't want to get involved, right?
Well,
Because
it
if
goes
something
back
you
to
can
the part-
intervene, if it goes bad.
You know,
we're
we were
gonna-
talking about during the break there with the Florida shooting and the officer that did not go in. There's a difference between training in a controlled environment and then having actual fundamental in the field training. I'm not able to go into my background, but I have the ladder. So when it happened, when everything happened there, it was all muscle memory, reflex. It just click, action, go.
I think you had a little bit of help.
Right. But this is another point, just sorry, for the heroism education part. One thing that heroism educators around the world have noticed is that when people jump on the subway tracks and save someone from getting hit by a train, or they intervene and they do whatever great, amazing thing, they often say that they had training. Like Wesley Autry was a guy in New York who jumped on the subway tracks. There was a guy that had cerebral palsy that had fallen onto the tracks. Wesley actually laid on top of him, and the train went over Wesley's body. And it was like an inch over his head. Like it could have skinned his head off, you know what I mean? But when they were all done, Wesley said two things. One was, I'm not a hero. And two was, when I was a kid, I used to do that. I would jump down and lay underneath the train. And so he had training. So this is why I want to do the seminars and why other people are doing conferences around the country and the world, because you're more likely to stop on the side of the road and help someone whose car is broke down or something, if it's safe, if you've had training on how to change a tire or how to do CPR or whatever, you know what I mean, or how to carry a firearm without, doing something bad with it.
Did you have training for anything?
Yes.
Oh, you have?
Oh, yes.
Was you in the military? No.
Officially, no.
Okay.
That's about all I can really say.
And after
Top
that,
secret.
my husband's been actually taking me to the range and showing me how to fire. Not in that purse, because I don't have any way to safely put it, but pretty much every day I'm carrying now, because I don't want to be a victim. I don't want to be cowering in my car waiting for somebody else to stand up because I have no way to defend myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like I told you before, I've gone through 2 instances where I was a victim in my life. And being in therapy has helped me realize that you can either be a victim or you can be a survivor.
Right.
And I have that mindset that I'm not a victim anymore. And I tell people that it's because you hear people talking about bad things in our life. Like you said, there's domestic violence, there's drug addiction. And people look at me weird because I say the first step to getting past that is to switch your mentality. Stop thinking of yourself as something that it's being happened to, and think of yourself as somebody who's getting past it.
Right. That's awesome.
And I carry almost every day. I look like a soccer mom. I realize this. I look like the least likely to carry a gun in my purse as anybody, but I do. And people go, well, aren't you scared? You know, you have kids. Aren't you scared to do that? And I said, I'm more scared of the possibility of somebody else hurting my kids than me carrying a gun in my purse.
Todd?
To go along with what you said, that you had the instinctive reasoning to defend your kids, do you think without your training and background that you would also have the instinct to just go in, you know, no holds bar, without the training and know how, like she did, and confronted the problem? Or
I'm pretty certain he would have. He's. I tell people, you know, Mama Bear is a real thing, but Papa Bears are too. And my daughter, her biological father is a piece of work, and he's gotten mad at him and actually gotten into his face and yelled at him because he's hurt our daughter. So I have a feeling if that were the case, you probably would have gotten out and protected the kids anyway, because.
Well, not only that, but to go along with that, not everybody that has training will do the same thing either. Yeah, you have a police officer in Florida. He was a military veteran, career police officer, thousands upon thousands of hours of training for this exact scenario. When the time came, he hid. So, and then you have people that have no training. A fire breaks out, they hear what they think is somebody's voice inside of a building, and they just run in and bring the person out before the fire department gets there. So even without the training, yes, I probably would have done the same thing. I may have just been winging it off of what I've seen on television of, yeah, this is how this is going to happen. But I probably still would have intervened.
Yeah, because I only asked that because I feel like I have that instinctual ability too, because a couple of years ago, back when I was in high school, my friends were messing around in the way Scout Higgins High School set up. Our gym for like working out is up on the top floor, second story, and they used to have old plate glass windows, and they got to messing around and almost fell out the window. And I would have to be right there, and I grabbed them as the plate glass was coming down. I luckily didn't get nicked, but they did. But like I grabbed them and they were almost out the window and just pulled them back in. So that's what I was saying. Do you prefer the instinct over training or training aspect along with it?
Can I speak to that too real quick, and then let's take another 10-minute break in a second just so we can get our energy up. And, yeah, we'll come right there. Just 1 second. We'll be right there. Sorry. So I have the stickers out front that say "Born to be Heroic," and my reason for that is because I believe that our instinct is to be someone who intervenes, right? Because it's natural. Dinosaurs did it. Tigers do it. Eagles do it. People, you know, animals and living beings try to protect themselves and their young, and fight to stay alive, typically in a healthy situation. But I think when we grow up in environments that are either oppressive in some way or abusive or bullying, we might get that beaten out of us. And so that's where the training, I think, comes in general, about intervention. You know, and then on top of that, you can stack on the firearms training and stuff. Question over here.
Before we move off the instinct portion of it, yeah, yes, we're all born with that instinct of self-preservation and the preservation of those that we care about.
Right.
But unfortunately, in modern society, we are taught not to intervene.
Right.
We're constantly told, be a good witness, while other people around you are being hurt. And that is a fundamental wrongness.
Yeah.
There's actually a quote from a movie that we both like, and I know it's not it's somewhere other than this movie. Somebody actually said this and the movie used it. But I think it actually goes with what you're trying to teach. That it's for evil to flourish. It only takes a good man to do nothing.
Right. And to go with that, there's another line that says, demons run when a good man goes to war. I love that one. Over here.
I
Last
was
question.
going to capitalize what the gentleman said. I mean, clearly what he demonstrated was a first responder type thing. And everyone's, the topic is training, but, training gives you the edge of how to deal with the situation, but it doesn't train you courage and it doesn't train you stupidity.
Right.
It just doesn't. Okay, I can't train somebody who's just a meatball to be not to be a meatball, and nobody can teach you courage in this world. So he actually, along with his training, gave him the edge, but I think courage and education really
And as far as the first responder portion of it goes, I was actually praised by officers on scene and the detectives, because with my previous training,
rightfully so.
as the first officer got on scene, I was able to identify myself to him in a manner to where he knew
You're the good guy.
that I was on his side, and he was able to come to me and get the basic information and know how to proceed from there.
I think it was Sergeant Bear had actually said he was going to nominate him for a commendation, but unfortunately, it didn't go any further because...
The very next day they came out with their PC. Well, we don't encourage anyone to do this.
Now, let me follow up with, just in a second or two, did you do anything specific that we could do to the police officer arriving on the scene, or did they know something about you beforehand? Like did you wave at him?
What
they
did you
didn't
say?
know
I think
any-
that's what he's going
Yeah.
at.
Yeah, essentially where I was controlling key evidence on site.
Yeah.
I made sure that once I knew what direction the officers were coming from, I made sure that the people around me were separated to where the officer would have a clear line of sight to me. I was able to raise my hand, showing the waving the officer towards my direction, and I was able to point directly at the evidence, so that on approach, he sees me, he sees the evidence secured, and he knew to go that direction.
Nice.
And I've always been told that if you have a gun and the police officer shows up, you let them know immediately that you have it. Because if you don't tell them this and then they see you with it, it's never going to end well. But he literally just told, what he just said where he pointed to it, and he told them he was armed. And they actually took your gun.
Nope.
No, they didn't. They were going to. And then
Nope. I asked him if he wanted it. He said, no, just keep it where it is.
Wow, that's
So
awesome.
you got this going on. You're lucky you never got one of these pointed at you.
He actually was longer at that point.
Really?
I made him cut it down.
It was longer, but I had a little bit of a welding accident last summer and lost half of it.
And that's when the cutting happened, because he would have left half of it and just the other half growing. You laugh, I'm not even kidding. He wanted to leave it. And I made him cut the rest of it off because it looked horrible.
He wanted to be his authentic self.
Right.
Yeah, see, no.
It's funny, someone that I became friends with since the incident, he's an attorney in the Brunswick, Portland area. He happens to be one of the lead Second Amendment attorneys in New England. Pretty much anytime the police have an issue or any of the gun activists have an issue, he's their consultant, which is kind of ironic that he's a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment because he's also a staunch, leftist.
Yeah.
So he kind of clashes with himself, and he admits it.
He gets in fights on Facebook with himself.
No.
Actually, yes. Yes.
It's another Mueller.
But, right after the incident, after watching the news interview and everything, he made a comment on the news interview that this guy looks like a dwarven berserker, but speaks like Muhammad.
Talk about that. That's awesome. Berserkers were the Vikings, the really crazy Vikings that were in war. All right, if you want to ask Mike, you got a question?
Well, not a question, it's just a statement.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I mean, it's amazing that you had the the instinct plus the training and took care of that situation. I spent 20 years working in strip clubs, working the door and DJing and all sorts of stuff. And we had one night where two gangs of pimps were in a war because one girl had gone from one gang to the other gang. And they were facing off in the parking lot, and there was probably 12 to 15 of these guys, like between everybody, and there's me and two doormen.
Wow.
And there's like, okay, this isn't gonna go, like there's no way we're getting in this.
Right.
This is in the middle of the parking lot over a girl. Like this is crazy. And not really about a girl. I mean, if you understand the world of pimps, it's more about the money, right? You know what I mean? But
Well, back
we're like,
in that world, they don't consider it a girl. They
Yeah.
consider it property.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
you know, if she left one to go to the other, that wasn't somebody making a decision. That was, you stole my property.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, I totally get it. Yeah.
That's the mentality you were dealing with.
Yeah. So we're not sure what to do because things are just about, people are yelling, screaming, they're like facing off at each other, like that classic, like, I don't know, West Side Story or something. But
Yeah.
Gone in 60 seconds.
so I step in the middle and I'm like, guys. And they're like, get the F out of the way and this and that. I'm like, this guy did this and this and that. And they're like swearing at each other in different languages and all sorts of stuff going on. And I'm like, okay, if this goes down, the cops are coming. Does anybody here not have a warrant and doesn't care that their car gets searched? And they all went, we'll see you around.
Nice. All right, hey, we got to call and wrap on that one with these guys. So ask some more questions on your break if you want, because I want to make sure you get some more food and drink. Come back pumped up to grand finale with Melanie and Mike from Canada. All right, let's give them a round of applause. Thanks, guys.